What's going on, everyone? It's your boy, the Fantasy Football Almanac, back at it with another fantasy football ranking video. Today we're ranking wide receivers for week 2, their matchups, everything you need to know so you can make the proper start-sit decisions and absolutely destroy your league mates, your friends, everyone that you play in fantasy football. But before I start, if you guys could go down, leave this video a like, leave this video a comment. I'm answering any fantasy football related questions down below. I will give you in-depth analysis on whatever you ask me, so I am more than welcome to help you guys. And subscribe to the channel. You can always change your mind later. Ring that notification bell. With that out of the way, we are going to start with our first tier, our S tier of wide receivers here. And I think you guys can already guess who's probably going to be on it. So for my S tier here, we got 6 guys. I know that probably sounds like more than you would expect, but our 6 guys in order are Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Davante Adams, Stephon Diggs, and Deebo Samuel here. Let's start with Justin Jefferson. Guy dropped 184 yards. Guy had 2 touchdowns. He was an absolute machine, putting up a career high, and now he goes up against the Eagles. And the Eagles just got into a shootout with the Lions. This game projects to be high scoring, very high octane, and Justin Jefferson will take advantage of it. If you have Justin Jefferson, he's a must start. Same thing with Cooper Kupp here. He is going up against the Falcons. The Falcons game may be a blowout early, and if that's the case, Cooper Kupp might not be used in this garbage time. He might be taken out. But at the same time, Cooper Kupp is an absolutely fantastic wide receiver, putting up 25 half-point PPR points last week and 15 targets. I mean, what more can you ask for than that? He's a lock to start every single week alongside Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase going up against the Cowboys. This Cowboys team, yes, it is riddled with injuries. We have no Dak Prescott, but the Bengals should go up early here from Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase should be able to take advantage of a pretty weak cornerback situation in Trevon Diggs. Trevon Diggs allowing the most yards in coverage last season, so I think it is entirely possible. Jamar Chase does really well, so that's why I do have him at 3. And I was considering a tier break here between 1 through 3 and 4 through 6, but at the same time, all these guys are absolute must-starts. And yes, well, the talent and the situation might not be as good. At 4, I do want to start with Davante Adams here. Davante Adams is one of those guys that just consistently produces week in and week out, getting 17 targets in his first game with Derek Carr in 10 years. I mean, that's just crazy to me. They do play the Cardinals here as well, and the Cardinals have one of the easiest defenses in the entire league, so I'm not worried about Davante Adams at all, especially with this week 1 performance. Number 5, I got Stephon Diggs here. Stephon Diggs looks like an absolute baller on opening night, Thursday night. He's going up against the Titans. The Bills might just wipe through the Titans, but we saw the Bills wipe through the Rams, and Stephon Diggs was still very heavily utilized. If that's going to be the case again, if they're going to utilize him even when they are up big, I think this game will be a blowout. I think Stephon Diggs will take full advantage of that. And then lastly here, we got Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel going up against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are a pretty weak team. I mean, yes, they did hold Russell Wilson to a low amount of points here, but I think that was more so the psychology of a revenge game here. Pete Carroll was coaching very, very well. Russell Wilson, Nathaniel Hackett looked awful, so I'm really not too worried. I think the 49ers do look to bounce back here. With their first game against the Bears ending in defeat, I think it was torrential downpour. I don't think that was reflective of Deebo Samuel. I don't think that was reflective of anybody on that team. And now that Elijah Mitchell is out, we may see Deebo get utilized around the goal line more in rushing schemes and get thrown the ball to a ton here. So that's why I do have him at 6. But now there is a tier break, and let's get into the A tier. So moving into the A tier, the first guy we got here is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, a guy I had previously faded. I am fully willing to admit I was wrong. 155 yards in his debut with Jalen Hurts. He looks to be the offense for the Eagles. They do play the Vikings, so there should, again, be a shootout. Same thing with him and Justin Jefferson. Both of these guys are going to be getting a ton of points from Jalen Hurts and Kirk Cousins here. The next guy I want to talk about is Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill proved in week 1 that he could be the wide receiver 1 in this offense, getting 12 targets, getting 8 receptions, putting up 14 fantasy points, even with a fumble and no touchdowns. This week, he is going up against the Ravens, which is a tiny bit concerning. The Ravens do have a pretty good secondary here, but at the same time, this is Tyreek Hill, one of the league's most premier wide receivers, and would be higher if his situation was better. But I think he's absolutely warranted of this top 10 spot here and sitting firmly in the A tier. Next up, I just want to add a caveat to this one guy, T. Higgins. If he does play, this is where I would have him. If he doesn't play, I would definitely move him down. But right now, I just like to have him here as a placeholder because it is possible he doesn't play. It is possible he does. I just want to rank him fairly so that way you guys don't sit T. Higgins if he does start based on my recommendation here. I would have T. Higgins firmly in the A tier here. The reason is they're playing the Cowboys. They should look to go up big early. Joe Burrow looked pretty bad. I think he will change things up. I think this whole offense will look better in week 2. And this is one of the few offenses that can really support 2 premium wide receivers here. So I do have a lot of faith in T. Higgins to be that guy. That's what I'm expecting this week. The next guy I want to talk about is Michael Pittman, a guy I was pretty low on in the draft process, but now that he's coming out dropping 22 half-point PPR fantasy points in week 1, he looks to be the only offense yet again. Paris Campbell looked like nothing. Ashton Doolin looked like nothing. I don't think there are any volume concerns here for Michael Pittman, but I am concerned they may run the ball a bit more. They were passing pretty much the entire first half, and they pretty much got nothing done. As soon as they switched over to Jonathan Taylor, it looked a lot better. The offense as a whole did. So I think we are going to see more running and a lower ceiling for Michael Pittman overall, but I still think Michael Pittman can be that top 10 guy and produce a nice ceiling for your fantasy team. Next up, I got Mike Evans here. I like Mike Evans a lot. One of the most consistent wide receivers in the entire league, putting up 15 points, getting an outstanding touchdown grab in his first game. They do play the Saints, which is a pretty stingy defense, and in the past, the Saints have absolutely shut down the Buccaneers. I don't know why. Every single game, it's like the Buccaneers' kryptonite here. I do think the Saints most likely will win this game, but Mike Evans will get his, especially with Chris Godwin out, especially with Julio only getting 5 passes. I think Mike Evans is in line for a massive target share here, and if that's what you're getting, that's more than good enough from the greatest of all time here. Let's move on to our last A-tier wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, a guy I'm a little bit concerned about now that he is getting passes from Cooper Rush. That is a little concerning here, but at the same time, he did get 11 targets in his first game. Yes, he did only have 2 receptions, but that is something that can be ironed out. What we like to look for is the target volume, and CeeDee Lamb absolutely got it. It shows that he's very, very talented and will be utilized in this offense. Cooper Rush may not use him as much, but CeeDee Lamb is still a premier talent, and that's why he does make it into the back end of my A tier. But now let's get into the B tier. Just wanted to take a quick break and say, if you guys could, please go down, leave a like on this video, leave a comment, let me know what you think of this list. Some guys you would have higher, some guys you would have lower. I am very interested. And subscribe to the channel. You can always change your mind later. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Now let's get back to the wide receivers. For the start of my B tier, I got 2 players in the same team. I got Courtland Sutton. I got Jerry Jeudy. Both of them, to me, looked pretty much the same. Jerry Jeudy getting that 75-yard touchdown. Both of them getting 7 targets. Clearly, Russ does not favor one over the other at this point. I was reading reports that Sutton was the favorite here, but it did not look like that in the first game. Yes, things may change, and things may change especially because they are going up against the Houston Texans, and they should figure to absolutely destroy the Texans. I know the Texans did look pretty good in week 1 here, but that's not something I necessarily expect to continue. So that's why I do have these 2 people at the top of B tier here. But let's move on. Next, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown got a good matchup against the Commanders. The Commanders have a pretty weak secondary here, so I think Amon-Ra St. Brown will be okay. Not only that, he does get tons and tons of targets here in week 1, something we might have been a tiny bit worried about. He also gets a touchdown. Always good for the fantasy football stat line. The next guy we have is Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis on opening night looked absolutely phenomenal. 4 receptions, 5 targets, 88 yards, really fulfilling that burner type role. 26-yard touchdown, a 50-yard pass. This guy will give you boom weeks. Yes, he may bust, but he is attached to arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to say it's Josh Allen, but Josh Allen is easily top 4. So I think his opportunities will go up, and also this offense is top 5 in passing, or at least was last year, so I imagine they maintain pretty similar volume, which should be enough to support both Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Also, they got a matchup against the Titans. I think they will be burning these Texans cornerbacks. We saw the Giants do that. Sterling Shepard, 66-yard pass to the house. I think 100% Gabe Davis will fit that role and burn some of these cornerbacks. To round out the B tier here, I got Michael Thomas and Mike Williams, the two Mikes. Let's talk about Michael Thomas first. He's going up against the Bucs, which I am a little bit scared about. I think the Bucs do present a pretty tough matchup here. I mean, the Bucs just locked up the Cowboys, only dropping 3 points throughout the entire game. So yes, it is a tiny bit worrying, but at the same time, Michael Thomas looked like his old self. 5 receptions, 8 targets, 2 touchdowns. I don't think you can ask for much more. When the guy hasn't played football in a year and a half, I think Michael Thomas is almost certainly back. Maybe a trade high candidate here, but still a guy I would have some confidence starting in the future, especially because you saw him, Jarvis, and Olave all get decent amounts of work. And then Mike Williams going up against the Kansas City Chiefs here. I think this should be an absolute shootout. I know people are concerned with Mike Williams dropping 4 points, but I'm here to tell you don't be. This is what Mike Williams does. He either drops 25 or he drops 3. That's who he is as a receiver. And if you have that, sometimes, yes, he may hurt you. He may lose you weeks. But at the same time, he can absolutely win you weeks. And that's what you're shooting for here. He's attached to Justin Herbert. He's going up against the Chiefs. This should be a great matchup. I would still start Mike Williams. That's the end of my B tier, though. Let's start the C tier off with 2 guys I view as pretty similar. First, we got Deontay Johnson. And second, we have Jalen Waddle. Yes, the Patriots defense is pretty decent here. It is a little bit worrying for Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is still a guy that will go out there and get over 10 targets, almost guaranteed here, putting up 12 targets for 7 receptions and 55 yards in week 1. This is a very talented receiver, a guy who can separate like that. I love Deontay Johnson, one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL, just because he's so crisp, so clean, one of the best route runners. And then we have Jalen Waddle here, another wide receiver I like. He is going up against the Ravens, which is, again, a little bit of a tough matchup, but I think this should present more opportunities to score points because in week 1, they go up against the Patriots. The Patriots score 7 points. There's really no need to be passing the ball a ton. Now, against the Ravens, this should be a lot more competitive of a game, and if that's the case, Jalen Waddle will be getting the ball a fair amount more, especially because the plan is most likely to lock up Tyreek Hill here, which should give Jalen Waddle space to operate in the flats, on curls, pretty much whatever Jalen Waddle does here. That's why these 2 guys are in a very, very similar range for me here. Let's move it down here to a guy I think is being pretty slept on, Christian Kirk. Yes, he is playing the Colts here. And the Colts do present somewhat of a tough matchup, but Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 1 in this offense, and it's not close. He did get 10 targets. He did have 5 receptions. This is a guy who was going very, very late in drafts, and now I think is warranted of a awesome floor. And that's kind of why I have all of these guys together. You'll see in a second the rest of the guys I talk about, but all of these guys have a very, very stable floor, and that's what I'm after in this tier. So that's why I do like Christian Kirk here. I think Christian Kirk is an absolute steal where he's going, is the wide receiver 1 in that offense. What more can you ask for? Next, we do have Brandon Cooks, a guy with, again, a very, very stable floor. Yes, the ceiling might not necessarily be there, but Brandon Cooks, one of the most consistently slept on wide receivers in the entire league. Yes, he is going up against the Broncos, and Patrick Surtain is a pretty good corner here, but Brandon Cooks is one of the most reliable wide receivers in the entire NFL. You do not have to worry. You can start Brandon Cooks at your flex, and rest assured, you know you're getting 10 points, you know you're getting 12 points. He may not have the ceiling of a 25-point game, but he doesn't have the floor of a 3-point game either. He is that good, and he's the only target in this offense. That's why I do have Brandon Cooks here. All right, let's move on to Juju Smith here, a guy I think is pretty consistently slept on here. I think Juju Smith is a pretty talented wide receiver. We saw him do it at age 22, putting up 1,400 yards. Yes, he did not look all that great in week 1, according to the stats, but at the same time, they absolutely blew out the Cardinals. There was no need for Juju to be on the field at all that game after the first quarter. And in the first quarter, he was getting tons and tons of receptions here. It was only after that where they just took him out. They didn't really care. So I think Juju is a pretty slept-on piece here, a guy I would absolutely recommend starting if you do have him in this range. Unless your wide receivers are Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson, I think he is worth a start here. And lastly, a guy that completely defies the rest of this category in safeness, DJ Moore. DJ Moore, a guy who will either drop 30 or 6. There's really no in between here. The quarterback situation still looks pretty bad with the Panthers, but at the same time, DJ Moore will still have those boom weeks. He still will go off some weeks. And sometimes injecting a little volatility into your lineup is what you need. So I do recommend starting DJ Moore as a low-end type of wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 here. But that is it for the C tier. Now let's move on to our D tier. My last tier, guys, here, my D tier, my wide receivers 24 through 30, starting it off with Allen Lazard. Yes, Allen Lazard may be injured. He may not play here. But if Allen Lazard does, this wide receiver core looked lost without a wide receiver 1. Aaron Rodgers looked lost without someone he can throw to on a consistent basis. Allen Lazard provides that, and he provides that in droves. That's why I was drafting Lazard all offseason here. I think he's a very underappreciated player because he already has the chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. And that's what Aaron Rodgers likes in these wide receivers, in these running backs. He hasn't built that up with a Romeo Doubs. He hasn't built that up with Christian Watson. As we saw, the drop from Christian Watson here, I think Aaron Rodgers does not trust him because of that drop and will not trust him until he proves again that he's a very talented guy. That's why I do have Lazard here. Moving on, we got Marquise Hollywood-Brown. Hollywood-Brown, a guy I thought I would have higher here, but I am a little bit concerned. He did have a touchdown in week 1, but only 6 targets, was out-targeted by Greg Dortch, so I think it is a little bit concerning for him. I personally have him this low. I want to see him bounce back. I want to see him break off a huge play like he normally does, and if he does that, I will move him back up here. But a guy I am a little concerned with in this new offense. He is a new fit. Maybe Kyler just doesn't feel 100% comfortable with him yet, considering he hasn't played with him in a few years. But we shall see. I do have Hollywood-Brown here. Next up here, we got Terry McLaurin, a guy I do kind of like, but not a guy I would trust as a wide receiver 2. I would have him more as a wide receiver 3 because he does have a tendency to drop a lot of goose eggs. And I think the goose eggs in this case outweigh the overall potential of Terry McLaurin here. Yes, I think Terry McLaurin's a fine start if you need him to be that guy. But at the same time, I am a bit wary of his overall volume here. They are playing the Lions, who did let up a lot of points, which is why he was able to sneak into my top 30. But not a guy I generally trust here. These next two guys, I'm going to combine talking about them. This is Allen Robinson, and this is Darnell Mooney. Allen Robinson playing the Falcons. If he is going to have a bounce-back game, it is going to be this week against a terrible team here. If not, then he is pretty much done. I would be really concerned. I wouldn't be able to start him. I wouldn't drop him, but I would not be able to start him at all. I also wouldn't really start him unless you need a wide receiver you can start here. And then Darnell Mooney is kind of in a similar situation where he did pretty bad week 1. But I'm going to, again, blame external factors here. The fact that there was absolutely torrential downpour at the game, I think it's really hard to judge Darnell Mooney's overall chemistry with year 2 Justin Fields here without a game in decent weather. So I think Darnell Mooney is still a top 30 start. And then my last guy, Drake London. Drake London is playing the Rams. He will have to match up against Jalen Ramsey, which is a little scary. But at the same time, Drake London is one of the most talented rookies we've seen in a while here. I think Drake London is super good, and he went out and proved it in his first game here. But anyways, guys, that is it from me. That is my top 30 wide receiver starts for week 2. Again, please go down in the comments. Ask me any questions. I'm answering all fantasy football related questions for you guys. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well. Turn on that notification bell. Again, you can always change your mind later if you don't enjoy the content, if you stop following fantasy football. But anyways, that's it from me. As always, have a good day, a good night, and a good life.